Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is the BLON A8 Prometheus. If you're watching this channel, you probably don't need to be introduced to the brand BLON. Wow, that was quite a tongue twister I just did for myself. But anyway, you probably don't need to be introduced to BLON, but just in case. In fact, I haven't reviewed any BLON earphones, but their brand, the BLO3 specifically, that earphone has got to be one of the most popular IEMs in Chi-Fi. And now they've come out with the A8 Prometheus, which is different in a couple of ways, and you're probably getting a hint of that just by seeing this box, but we'll dig into that a little bit deeper. So, like the BLO3, the Prometheus here is a single dynamic driver earphone. It's, I think, a 10mm dynamic driver if you're into measuring your driver widths. And I guess apart from that, it's $88. So the BLO3 got really popular because it was $33. This is $88, still not that expensive, but definitely a step up. And I'm pretty interested to see what BLON can do with that extra budget. Obviously, as you're getting a little teaser here, the aesthetic is definitely standout here on the Prometheus. But this is just going to be kind of a first look unboxing of what we get inside the box here. And then I'm going to also attempt to measure the frequency response of the no, not the BL. Actually, it is the BLA8. That's a lot of letters and a lot of numbers. But anyway, that's what we're going to do in this video. But that's not all, because I've also got with me this chonker right here. This is the Cayin Fantasy. And like the BLA8, like the Prometheus, I like that name better. This is a single dynamic driver earphone, but this one is from the company Cayin. And if you recall, maybe about 6 months ago, I reviewed the Cayin N3 Pro, which has become one of my favorite digital audio players. And this is an in-ear monitor from that same company. Unlike the BLA8, unlike the Prometheus, this is not a cheap earphone. This is around $800, but it's also a single dynamic driver. And I'm pretty interested to check out what Cayin's doing with that kind of budget. I know they've got sort of a stainless steel build. Again, it's a 10mm dynamic driver, about the same. But obviously, there's a lot more that you can do different with an earphone. So yeah, what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to unbox both of these IEMs. We'll see what we get inside with them. Then I'll throw them up on my measurement rig, and we'll see what their frequency response looks like. And if you're not familiar with looking at frequency responses, I should do a bit of a tutorial coming up soon. But basically, this frequency response is going to let us kind of get an idea for what the flavor of an IEM is. It's not going to tell us if it sounds good or bad, but it's going to tell us, is this a bassy IEM? Is this a trebly IEM? Is it a neutral, or is it a V shape? It's going to tell us that kind of stuff, and I'm interested to find out. And of course, I'm going to be spending more time living with both of these earphones to do full reviews. And if you want to be around for those, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell so that YouTube lets you know that I'm live with those reviews. But for now, let's just go ahead and unbox these, and I'll go ahead and start actually with the BLON BL A8 Prometheus. See if I can give this thing a, oh, that was a weak spin. Let's do a better spin. I got more room on my table now, so I can attempt these spins live. They might not be fancy, but I'm gonna attempt them live. So yeah, here we've got the box for the BL. Oh my gosh, I need to stop saying the BL part, because you know what? It's just unnecessary. But yeah, the A8 Prometheus. We can do a quick tour of this box and see if there's anything to learn about it. But I mean, the big spoiler here is what this thing looks like, and try not to pay too much attention there. But we'll go around here on the back. We've got a diagram of the unit again. Technical parameters. Let's see, 115 decibels of sensitivity, which that's actually pretty sensitive. We'll see how that stacks up in reality, but that's actually pretty sensitive. And a frequency response of 20 to 20,000 hertz, pretty typical claim, because if you're wondering why it's always 20 to 20,000 hertz, that's just like the kind of commonly understood range of human hearing. So to go anywhere below or above 20 to 20,000 hertz doesn't really make a ton of sense, although some IEMs do. I got a 3.5mm connector, 10mm dynamic driver, like we talked about, and the wearing mode is ear hanging type, which just means it goes over your ear, which I think we expected. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into the box of the Prometheus and see what's inside. All right, and right away we are treated to this look, and I'm gonna do my best to ignore those things for now, and we'll see what's inside this accessories box. And I'm fumbling with it, but let's see what we get for 88 bucks. So again, 88 bucks, not super cheap, but also not that expensive. You know, obviously we've got the Cayin over here showing us what expensive looks like, but for 88 bucks, you get a little carrying bag. I think this is the same carrying bag that came with the BL03. So if you've already got one of those, well, now you've got two of them. But I guess if you've got two IEMs, that makes sense. Ear tips, interestingly, are packaged in two different boxes or in two different bags. Let's see if there's any difference between them, but on first inspection, it seems like they're roughly the same. Let's see, we've got, this one's actually kind of a bit of a wide bore, and that one's a bit of a normal bore. So it looks like they've given us a set of wide bores in all different sizes, and then there is a set of narrow bores in just the medium size. We'll see what comes pre-installed on the IEM, but I'm gonna guess it's a medium bore and medium size. So there's your tips. Here's the cable that comes with the Prometheus. And I'll say right up front, this is, so I've reviewed, or I actually never did review either of the Blons, but I have in my possession, and I've spent time with both the BL03 and the BL05, and neither of them have great cables. This cable, however, this seems like a pretty decent cable. You can see that it's lying, you know, relatively flat. It's got a little bit of memory to it, but I feel like this is going to break in with time and probably will become pretty flat and pretty straight. But I don't know. Let's zoom in on that so you can take a look. It's a pretty handsome cable. You know, simple. It's not very thick, but it does seem to be satisfactory. And I'll give it the old roadie wrap to see how it sits on a table. It does have, you know, a fairly small chin cinch or a Y split here, and then as well as a chin cinch that slides up and down, a little bit on the loose side. But, you know, it's perfectly functional, I suppose. It's just not ideal when it slides around like that. But there we go. There is the cable. We'll throw that one aside and finally take a look at these. I see someone in the chat calling them Swiss cheese. These Swiss cheese looking IEMs. Have you ever seen anything like this? I'm going to guess no, because I've seen a lot of IEMs and I've definitely never seen anything like this. This is the Prometheus. This is the thing that they do. And oh my goodness, look at that. Look at that design. Let me see if I can give you any unique angles on this, or maybe explain what's going on here. Yeah, there's basically a cavity right around here, which is where the dynamic driver is, and that's where all the acoustic stuff is going to be happening. Although you might be able to tell, you know, here's the 2-pin connector up top, and there is a, I don't know, some sort of metal bit, some sort of metal continuation that goes from the 2-pin to that cavity, and then it's just surrounded in this very unique metal cage, which I gotta say is pretty stunning to look at. We'll see how it fits and what it feels like in the ear, but I don't know, I don't feel any sharp edges, and generally I think that's actually a pretty cool thing. There's the nozzles. They got a pretty typical screen on them, and like I guessed, man, I'm so good. It's got the medium bores with the medium size on there. So let's go ahead and hook this thing up to the cable, and then I will give it a quick fit test before we do the measurement, just to see what this thing fits like. We can answer some questions as quickly as possible. What does it fit like? What is its sound signature? And it's interesting. Look at that. That is a really aggressive angle. I don't know if we can see that. That's a really aggressive angle on the 2-pin connector, right? So the 2-pin is pointed this way, and the IEM is pretty aggressively pointed inward. So what does that mean for fit? Let's find out. Let's throw these things in the ears. All right, cable. That chin cinch, it's acting up. Okay, I feel like I'm gonna need a bigger size ear tip because, oh, this is different. Let me throw in the larges because actually I don't even know if these are larges. Those seem pretty small. I'm gonna throw in what look like medium ear tips, just because I think I'll get a better fit. And yeah, that does fit me better. It just gives me a more complete seal. And I'll say, like, just kind of up front right now, the even, you know, despite the fact that they have that kind of oddly aggressive angle on them, I gotta be honest, like, the fit is pretty good. these fit pretty comfortably. I don't feel, at least immediately, we'll find out if over time it becomes an issue, but I don't immediately like feel any sharp edges or anything like that. Just generally, I would say a pretty comfortable fit, very secure. Sound isolation is maybe not the strongest, but it's also not that bad. And then my ear canal feels quite sealed. I would say that these don't fit deep, but they also don't fit super shallow, so somewhere in between. I don't know, yeah, that's a surprisingly good fitting IEM for being so unique looking. So that is the BLON Prometheus. Let's go ahead and throw it up on my measurement rig to pull you into view. See what the frequency response of this thing looks like. Before I do that, let's put this stuff away before I lose it. Oh, and I did forget to go over the paperwork. If you want to take a minute and just go through, I'm just kidding. We're not going to do that right now. Stuff aside. And I am going to try out some new technology over here, so bear with me. But we've got picture-in-picture, and I've got actually my iPad down here with Rue. So hopefully you're seeing what I'm seeing. And what we've got here is the frequency response for the BLON BL03. This is an earphone, again, I mentioned it's a really popular earphone. So if you've heard it, this is a good frame of reference. This is a very warm, bassy tune. You can kind of see right around here, this bass rise is pretty aggressive, which is kind of the defining feature of the BL03. If you like a bassy earphone, the BL03 is actually, I think, a pretty well done bassy earphone. I'm interested to see what they've done with the Prometheus, so I'll throw that onto the measurement rig over here. See, I always measure the left one. Let's give that a fit. Come back over here. Let me make sure that I'm all set up. I need to output there. All right. Preferences, make sure we are going to the correct output and input. I know this isn't the most exciting part right here, but maybe it is. Maybe the drama of all this is worth it. All right, I'm gonna measure it and oops, popping out of the coupler, so let me make sure that's seated well and not gonna squeeze itself out. Oh, I have that still going. That was my fault, my error. The last earphone I measured, I checked the right earpiece because there was a problem with it. And there you go, there is your frequency response for the Prometheus. Let me go and label that. I think I typed that correctly. And let me go ahead and align it with the BL03 just so we have some sort of frame of reference here. All right, let's see, let's align them. I'm gonna say, let's go ahead and go with the 500 Hertz alignment because that looks like it's about right. And if you're interested in checking out these frequency responses in depth for yourself, I'm going to upload this to squig.link in a second. And if you're curious, I'll show you what that looks like in a second. But yeah, just based on this, it looks like, you know, the bass rise that we get here on the Prometheus, which is the blue line, pretty similar to the bass rise that we get on the BLON BL03. Maybe a little bit less, a little bit more rolled off in the sub bass, but it's kind of going to depend on where you align them. And we'll see in listening tests if that actually works out. And then you can see here in the upper mid-range, it seems like there's a little bit, maybe a little bit more thinness to the Prometheus based on this. And you're also seeing a little bit of extra treble here. In fact, I should have been careful to make sure I got that peak at 8K. I might need to remeasure that to make sure. But it looks like we've got a little bit of extra treble present. So combined with, so a little bit extra treble, slightly thinner mid-range, I'm gonna say that based on this frequency response, I'm gonna guess the Prometheus is a V-shaped sound signature. The BL03 is kind of a warm, quasi V-shaped sound signature. It's still got a pretty full and thick mid-range, which is one of the things I actually like about the BL03, but it looks like here with the Prometheus, they've gone with a slightly different tune. So, interested to, of course, spend some time listening to the earphone, but for now, all we've got is the measurement. And what I'm going to go ahead and do in a bit, I think after I unbox the Cayin, is I'm going to upload these measurements to squig.link, and that's what you're looking at right here. If you head over to squig.link, this is where I upload all my frequency responses, right? So you can go in here, type in Blon, filter the list of frequency responses to the Blon earphones. See, here's what the BL03 looks like, and you can tell that it looks a little bit different than it did in this tool. And that's just because the scale is slightly different, and throwing everything into Squiglink is a very nice way of having everything normalized and presented in a way that you're going to see on other measurement sites like Critical's website. So yeah, that is my measurement of the BL03, and in a second I'm going to upload the Prometheus here so you can check it out for yourself. But I think before we do that, might as well go ahead and dip into the Cayin Fantasy, which again, shout out to Cayin for sending this to me, and I forgot if I actually mentioned it. Shout out to Keep Hi-Fi for sending me the BLON Prometheus. Links to both of these products are in the description down below if you're interested in checking them out. But yeah, so Keep Hi-Fi, thanks for sending me the Blons, and Cayin, thanks for sending me the Fantasy, which we'll check out right now. Let's go ahead and go to the table. I'm gonna move this thing out of the way before I attempt to spin. That was a brave spin, because as you can probably tell, this is a pretty big box that the Fantasy comes in. You do a quick tour of the box. It's got, a nice actually 3D sort of effect there. We've got a high-res audio logo, which is very, very important. Never be the same again. This is Cayin's slogan. They had that all over the N3 Pro player as well. And then back here, maybe some specs. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read this stuff. It's pretty small and it's in gold, but let's see. Sensitivity of 108 decibels and an impedance of 37 ohms, frequency range of 20 to 40,000 hertz. That's how you get your high-res placebo badge. But other than that, I don't know. There's a bunch of spoilers about what's in the box, but we don't need those spoilers because we're gonna open it up right now. At least I think I'm gonna. Let's see. Ooh, fancy. Magnets. I don't know why I'm still such a sucker for magnets. Oh, you've got double magnets? Man, so triple magnets? Oh my gosh. There's magnets. Look at this. I feel like I gotta keep these magnets and do something with them afterward. But there you go. You have your IEMs sitting there in the box. And then they've actually got these little drawers down here for the accessories, which, I mean, it's an $800 earphone, so you can kind of guess that they're going all out in the packaging. This is pretty nice. Let's start with the bottom one. Looks like we've got accessories in a box over here. And then we've got the headphone cable. Wow, they've very considerately labeled it for us. That was not elegant, but it'll do. And then in this top box, we'll take a look at that one second. All right, accessories. Let's see what we have in here. We've got paperwork. You want to read the paperwork? I don't know. Hit me up later. I'll read the paperwork to you. Comes with a actually pretty nice, looks almost like a Kleenex, but this is just a nice microfiber towel, which you'll probably want for wiping down your IEMs and keeping them nice and shiny. Get a pair of tweezers, which I'm not sure exactly what they'll be needed for with this IEM. Maybe we'll find some more accessories, but you do get a cleaning brush and a shirt clip, which I've never been one to use something like that, but if you are, I suppose it's nice that that's included. Over here in the cable box, this is what I'm more excited about. Take a look at this box that you get with an $800 earphone, or take a look at the cable. I don't really care too much about the box that it comes in. So this is a pretty nice looking cable, a little bit almost like the Prisma Azul cable, but a little bit on the glossier side, quite a bit on the glossier side. Let's see if we can unravel this. All right. Successfully unraveled that. I don't know why we need those things. And I'm gonna tell you right now, this tangling that you're seeing right here, this is all my fault. I think this seems like a pretty nice cable. And once I get this thing properly rotary wrapped, I think we'll find that it seems to be pretty well behaved. Maybe a little bit on the memory. No, that's not bad. This is a pretty solid cable. So you got a nice thick, chonky 3.5 millimeter connector down here with the Cayin branding on it. I think that's actually a pretty handsome little touch. We got our Y-split, which again seems to have some Cayin branding on it. A more functional chin slider than the last one. And then of course we've got preformed ear hooks with, it looks like, shrouded 2-pin connectors. So I'm guessing that the fit on the IEM pieces itself are going to have little protrusions, but let's give it the rotary wrap and see how well this cable lies flat. And I think it's going to lie pretty flat. This is a nice feeling cable. There you go. Go and dive into the second drawer. I don't even expect one drawer, let alone 2 drawers. I think we'll leave those ear tips in there though. We'll just do that quick tour of the ear tips here. Let's see, we've got, they call these balanced ear tips, vocal ear tips. You've got memory foam ear tips, bass ear tips, and then biflange ear tips. I'll pull out one of each so we can just take a look at them and compare. Pull out the mediums, and then the foam ones. Oh my, there we go. All right, successful. Let's take a look at each of these ear tips. Again, just so we have that frame of reference. These were, I believe, the balanced ones. These were the vocal ear tips. It looks like a slightly wider bore. These were the bass ear tips, which curiously have the widest bore. The biflange, which have got kind of a medium bore, and you can see that it's got that 2-layer design to it. So probably get a little bit of a deeper fit there. And then here are the foam tips, which have got actually a bit of almost a matte finish to them. Interesting. Let me go ahead and throw these back in there, because we don't need these for now. It almost feels like a game of Operation. Familiar with that game. Let's check out what's in here. I mean, it says storage box, so I guess I have an idea, but let's find out for ourselves. Oh, interesting. So the carrying case for the Fantasy is this kind of very soft faux leather. Let me give it the smell test. Yeah, it's definitely a faux leather. It's not a real leather, but that's an interesting way to carry it. I don't know. It's a lot of these IEMs will come with a hard case, and they're nice, but they're kind of hard, honestly, to carry around. This feels to me like a kind of case that I would actually carry these IEMs around. And if you look inside, let's see if we can get that on camera to show up. It looks like there's actually little pockets for the individual earpieces, which is, I don't know, this is actually kind of a nice little case. I don't have anything like that. I might use that sometimes. But let's go ahead and dive into, finally, the earpieces themselves. I don't think there's going to be anything else hidden under here, just some foam. So we'll put aside this very beautiful box and then just pull these things directly out. I think. There we go. Oh my, those are weighty, as you might expect. So like I think I mentioned up top, the Cayin Fantasy is made out of all stainless steel, and it definitely feels like it. Like it's got some nice heft in the hand. Oh, that actually feels pretty nice. I'm trying to see if there are covers, and it does look like there are. So I want to remove these so we get the maximum stainless steel effect. And hopefully I don't scratch them. But wow, that is, I gotta say, that is a very, very handsome IEM. And given the weight of it, like it just feels pretty nice in the hand. Take off the ear tips, you can take a look at the nozzle. Let's say that is, you know, a somewhat lengthy nozzle, but not too long and definitely not too short. And you've got a fairly typical metal grill on it. Let's go ahead and throw it on the cable. And then we'll give it a fit test. Appreciate Cayin putting this red dot. You see that? See that red dot on the cable connector? I wish more manufacturers did that. Very simple thing, just to make it so I don't have to squint and find out which side the cable is. Red equals right. It would have been funny if I got that wrong. There you go. There is the Cayin Fantasy. Let's go ahead and throw this thing in my dome. See how it fits. Interesting. So I'll show you this one after this fit test, but the body of it is actually a little bit on the bulbous side on the inside. So despite what seemed like kind of a long nozzle, they don't fit that deep. They fit fine, but yeah, I don't know. It seems generally pretty comfortable. Maybe not the most secure, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll find out over time. These immediately don't feel as secure as the Blons. Not that I think most people are cross-shopping these with the Blons, but just kind of a frame of reference. That is the Cayin Fantasy in the head of this dude right here. So yeah, again, isolation I would say is probably average. Not fantastic, but I don't know, isolation just doesn't matter that much to me, and I say that all the time. I'm tired. I hope you're not tired of me saying that, but that is the Fantasy. But let's go ahead and throw it up in the measurement rig, and we'll see what this thing measures like. So let's see. Come back over here. Actually, let me go ahead and disable these graphs. We don't need to see those for now. So this one appears to be pretty sensitive because it clipped, which just means I need to turn down the volume when I do this next measurement. And it's notable that it clipped once it got to the treble measurement, which, as you're seeing here, is a good indication that it is a very treble-focused IEM. Cayin Fantasy, we'll label it as such. But yeah, there you go. There is the frequency response of the Cayin Fantasy. Yeah, so I would say like right around here, right around 1K is where you typically see this rise. We'll call the pinna gain or the ear gain. Basically, when you see an IEM's frequency response rise in this area, it's not because it's not a neutral IEM. It's because the human ear, this part of your ear actually tends to amplify frequency response or the sound waves in sort of like the 1,000 to 4,000 hertz range. So when an IEM bypasses this part of your ear, they have to bake that sort of gain into the frequency response to make it sound natural. So what we see here is, frankly, what looks like a lot of that gain. I think we'll probably best see what this comparison looks like once I actually upload it into squig.link, which we'll do in a bit. But yeah, there you go. That is, it's got a little bit of a mid-bass bump over here. But you can see that the bass level, if I put my line here, is well below the upper mid-range and especially the treble. This treble right here is, I gotta be honest, this looks pretty bright, especially here in this 5K region, where treble in this region has a tendency to kind of give like a bit of an edginess to vocals. Maybe you can bring out sibilants sometimes. It's a little bit more complicated than frequency response, but it can give a bit of like this edginess or like this sense that vocals are really right on top of you. This rise that we see here around 8K, this one is probably just from the measurement rig. There's almost always a resonance peak at around 8K hertz. But this peak down here at around 11K, that one's not part of the typical measurement rig peak. So yeah, I would say this looks like a pretty trebly IEM, pretty bright, pretty forward. We'll see how, that tells us, again, kind of the general signature. It doesn't tell us whether or not it sounds good or it sounds bad. just tells us that it's probably pretty bright. But if you're just here for the unboxing and the frequency responses, feel free to jump out. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to hang out for a little bit longer. If you're here live, I'll sit around and we can have a little conversation. I'll answer some questions, but I'm also going to, in real time, upload these to squig.link so that you can play around with them yourself. If you haven't visited squig.link before, I recommend checking it out because it's my website and I like it when people check it out. But yeah, this is the tool, and I'll show you off this new feature that I built in here. I'm calling it a tutorial of sorts, where if you can see, hopefully this is coming through in the video, along the bottom of the frequency response graph, there are these different sections that I have called out, right? So I've got sub bass, mid bass, lower mid range, upper mid range, presence region, mid treble, and air. And those describe sort of different segments of the frequency response. And then if you click into one of those, right, if you're ever curious, like what does upper mid range, what does this dude on Super Review mean when he's talking about upper mid range? Click into that, and here's kind of my description. This is how I interpret upper mid range, right? And this is, generally where you'll get clarity in your audio. If it's elevated, you'll probably get a very strong sense of clarity. If it is under my target, you'll probably get somewhat of a muted sound presentation. And maybe that reference to my target brings up another point, which is worth talking about here. And let me go ahead and hide the BLO3 measurement for a second and just leave behind this line, which is, it's called the Super Review target. Basically, this dotted line kind of represents what to my ear sounds neutral or just about ideal. Here's again, sort of in that upper mid-range, let's actually go ahead and highlight that upper mid-range section. This is where we get that ear gain that I was talking about. So I expect roughly about this much ear gain. And if you want to know if something has a lot of ear gain or not a lot of ear gain, you can kind of reference it relative to this line that I've drawn. My lower mid-range, I like pretty flat lower mid-range and flat mid-bass, and with a slight rise into the sub bass. So just to kind of give you a sense for, how to compare something like the BLON, let's go ahead and pull up the BLON real quick. And this is again the BLON BLO3. You can see that in both the mid bass and the sub bass, it's quite a bit elevated above my general preference. That doesn't mean I don't like it because of that. It just means that when I'm reviewing it, I'm probably going to tell you it's pretty bassy, because for my reference, it's pretty bassy. Upper mid-range actually looks like it's pretty in line with my target, to be honest. There is a bit of a dip here in the top end of it, but then you can see here in what we call the presence region. That's around the 5K that we were just talking about with the Cayin Fantasy. At around 5K, that kind of gives it that slight sense of edginess, and it's not too far forward. You can see again, it's roughly in line with my target, but because it is a little bit more forward of this part of the upper mid-range, it might make it sound just slightly on the unnatural tonality. And then mid treble here, this is kind of where we call out that 8K peak that shows up in a lot of measurements. It's not really safe to say that if you see this 8K peak that you're going to hear it. That's just going to be an artifact of the measurements, and it might be there for real, but I wouldn't assume it based on the measurement. And then the air region, this is where this is like the bits of treble that just kind of add to that sense of space. Generally, there's not a lot of fatigue generated by treble in the air, and in fact, a lot of earphones just don't have a lot of air, as you can see here. Actually, the BLO3, does a decent job with maintaining some treble through the air, but like most IEMs, it will roll off near the top. So that's general sense of how to read frequency responses. I'm going to do the really boring thing right now, and I'm going to pull up my laptop and try and get these things uploaded into Squiglink so that you can navigate them yourself. This is my laptop. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to try and be a good host and jump over to chat and see what's going on. So let me jump back to the top and just shout out to Big Boss. What's up? First, you were first. That's cool. DNTR back at it again with the dry Ms. That's right. If you're not familiar with Oppities and dry Ms, you missed out on some pretty good memes. And I guess now is probably not the best time to catch you up, but someday we'll catch you up. Cheebs, how's it going? Nice to see you there as well. Cheebs saying Moondrop A8 versus Blon A8. That might be not a very fair fight. But I haven't actually heard the Moondrop A8. Just the S8. Phoenix, how's it going? Nice to see you, and glad you could catch this one live. Same to you, Sangram. I'm just reading through comments right here. I know I've moved my monitor so that it looks so I can try it and pretend that I'm making eye contact. But yeah, I'm still just looking at a monitor down here with the live chat, as you can see right here. All right, let me go ahead and export these measurements from Rule and hopefully get them over into my laptop. This process can take some time, unfortunately, but let's see. Export measurement as text. This is the not very sexy part of audio reviewing. Blon A8 Prometheus. Male. So we've got those measurements exported, and in due time they should show up on my laptop, which, if you're curious, this is what a MacBook keyboard looks like, but it's not that interesting. Let's see, Google Drive. Let's go ahead and update. Let's do it. You know, because I know my file names, I don't actually even need to wait for it to update technically. Let's try to shoot this one from downtown. Blon A8 Prometheus. And then the Cayin. This will be the first Cayin IEM that I've reviewed, or I've measured on Squiglink. And it looks like it is all coming through. Excellent. Let me go ahead and throw that onto the internet as we do. This is thrilling TV, I know. Appreciate y'all hanging out. All right, so now if we jump back over to squig.link, I didn't test this, so we're doing this live. Might be able to tell I'm not used to using Safari, but let's go ahead and, oh no, what did I do to Safari? I don't want reader view. Go away, reader view. Reload. This is really embarrassing Safari noob stuff. Everything's working over here. Pull up the keyboard just to make sure. All right, there we go. Safari noob. Go back to searching for Blon, and as you can see, we've got the BL03 measurement here, and now the BL88 Prometheus. We can add that to the graph by hitting the plus button, and we can see how both of those things compare. Another interesting part of this tool is that there is this button right here called baseline. So I'm going to click baseline on the BL03, and what it's going to do is it's going to flatten out the line for the BLON BL03, and it's going to show you what the Prometheus squiggle looks like relative to the BLON. And then if we go back up to here, we can kind of get a sense for, in the base region, honestly, they're pretty similar. It does look like there's a little bit of roll off in the sub base for the Prometheus relative to the BLON. But otherwise, like the fact that these lines line up pretty on top of each other is a pretty good indicator that they're going to be pretty similar in base quantity. Here in that lower mid-range, it's where you start to see that little dip. And that's where I called out that what looks like maybe a slightly thinner mid-range. But the upper mid-range looks pretty even. And then here in that presence region, actually maybe more in the mid-treble, you can see there's a little bit extra treble energy on the Prometheus. So that's where, you can definitely see it here in the air frequencies. That's where I'm going to guess that the Prometheus is going to come across a little bit more V-shaped versus the BL03. So that's pretty interesting to check out. And then the other one that I threw into here is the Cayin Fantasy, which you can check out as well. And so that's what the Cayin Fantasy looks like relative to my target. This kind of reminds me of the TIN T5. So I'm going to pull up that measurement so we can take a look at that and see if they actually overlap. And you can see, yeah, I think treble-wise, this looks pretty similar to the TIN T5, although it's actually got a little bit more of that lower treble, sort of upper mid-range bit right here, right, which we called the presence region, and then less bass. And that's going to have a big effect on not just is this going to have more treble than the T5 up here, but the fact that there's this much less bass than the T5, and this bass looks like it's roughly in line with my neutral. Because there's less bass there, that treble emphasis is going to come across even more significant. So yeah, I'm gonna expect the Cayin Fantasy to be a pretty bright sounding IEM, which is curious. Let me jump back over to chat though and see how everyone's doing. Does anyone have any questions about this stuff? Interested in any further clarifications? Yeah. Let's see what's going on. Malfunct saying Squig is awesome. Hope you like squig.link. I'm gonna have to make some Squiglink t-shirts or something soon. See some talk about USB-C or Apple dongles basically and bit rates. Not super exciting, if I'm perfectly honest. Sai's asking KXXS or the BLON Prometheus. So I don't have a KXXS, but I do have a KXXX, which I think is pretty similar. So if we go back to the BLON, and then we bring up the KXXX, we can kind of see what those two look like, right? So this, yeah, that was the Prometheus. So this is the green line is your Prometheus. The Moondrop is the yellow line. And it looks like the Moondrop has got sort of, I would call a more complete upper mid-range and a little bit thinner in the mid-bass. But I think probably based on this frequency response, I would say that the Prometheus looks like, again, a more V-shaped sound signature. It's going to come across maybe with a stronger sense of clarity and a little bit more contrast between the treble and the bass with that mid-range scoop. But not too far off there. I think the biggest difference, honestly, is probably going to be here in this mid-treble, which seems like kind of a lot of mid-treble on the BLON, to be honest. We'll see about that. Hime asking, have I tried sleeping with the Sony XM4s? I think you're referring to the new true wireless Sony earphones, which I've got over there. I haven't actually tried sleeping with them, no. Maybe I'll do that tonight. Seems like every time I try sleeping with true wireless earbuds, I wake up and one of them is missing, and just kind of a pain in the butt. So that's why I sleep in IEMs all the time, but I prefer them to be wired. One thing somebody, I think it was Hiren, said in the Discord chat, and if you're not a part of the Discord chat, check the link in the description down below and join. But Hiren was saying that he could activate the touch-sensitive controls with his shoulder, which suggests to me that there's a good chance that if I'm wearing them when I sleep, I might accidentally activate them like with the pillow, but we'll find out. What's up, Juan? Nice to see you there. Oh, and Big Boss, you're saying that you have actually slept with the XM4s and that it was pretty decent. Okay, there you go. Did you have any issues? Like, did your pillow activate the touch controls or was that fine? Milana Saeed, how's it going? Thanks for joining. And Mina, you're saying that the Cayin Fantasy looks overly bright. And I gotta say, based just on the frequency response, I think you're right. Like, I'm pretty... Honestly, I'm a little bit worried about how bright this thing is based on the frequency response. Again, I don't want to judge an earphone just based on saying the squiggle. Squiggle is a pretty good indicator of what the sound signature is, but not necessarily an indicator of quality. But that sound signature is pretty bright, and I'm a little bit worried about it. Gabo saying, hi, very useful, that Squiglink. Is it still worth getting the TFZ T2 Galaxy? That's an interesting question. I still have my T2 Galaxy. It's over here in my collection. But I'll be honest, I haven't listened to it for a long time. It never really was my ideal frequency response. It's pretty V-shaped. But I guess if you want a V-shaped sound signature with pretty good bass and really surprisingly good stage, for the price, it's not bad from memory. I think my biggest problem with it, honestly, was the driver flex, which I found really annoying. Chris Stroud asking, do I prefer different sound signatures for different music? For the most part, no. And that's part of why I don't really give like genre-based recommendations. The other part being that I don't find that genres uniformly sound the same. But there are some exceptions. Like there's some music that I feel like electronic music tends to, at least for me, work better on balanced armature sets where acoustic or just more analog instruments might sound a little bit better on a dynamic driver. And that just kind of comes down to kind of the inherent natural timbre of a dynamic driver, whereas balanced armature is a little bit more about the precision, but sometimes can give up a little bit of that natural sound. When you're listening to electronic music, it doesn't matter if it sounds natural, right? So that's kind of the one area where like I'll pick an earphone for a given sound, but for the most part, I don't know. If I like an earphone, I generally like it with all of my music. Juan saying Prometheus is basically just blonde BLO3, but more thin V-shaped. Yeah, I mean, that seems like what it'll be based on the frequency response. I'm curious to see how that carries through to sort of the technicalities though. Mina, you use Firefox. Interesting. I'm just using Safari here because it's clean, like it looks nice on camera, I suppose. Primarily, I'm a Chrome user though. Jeremy, I've been using NoScript for ages. How do you browse the internet without JavaScript? Like, for real. You can't even use Squiglink without JavaScript. Cheeb saying the Fantasy looks like T5 but worse. That's gonna hurt to review. I hope not, because I gotta spend some time with this thing. LS is asking, is the FiO UTWS3 a recommended Bluetooth adapter, or should I be looking into something else? So I actually have, I need to actually do the review of the UTWS3 or UTSW. I forget which collection of letters and numbers they've got there, but you got it right. I've had it for a while, and I've been having a hard time motivating myself to use it because I can hear that it clearly doesn't sound as good as it normally does. And the earphone I've been testing with it is the FiO FH3. I gotta say the product itself, it seems pretty decent, and as far as Bluetooth adapters go, I like the form factor of it. It's got some issues with the fit. The case is a little bit on the large side, but it's gonna kind of necessarily be, I don't know. I don't want to give too many spoilers away for the review, but like I'm pretty lukewarm on it, but I also like I don't need a Bluetooth adapter for my earphones. If that's a thing that you're looking for, I've definitely used worse products. Atul asking, will it be an upgrade over the TIN T2 Plus? I assume you're asking about the Prometheus, and that's TBD. Let's go ahead and I'll show you just for reference how I might compare the Prometheus to the T2 Plus, right? So you can, again, go into Squiglink, pull up the T2 Plus squiggle, and it looks like the Prometheus, which again is in green, the tin is in this purple line. The Prometheus is going to be bassier, and the T2 Plus has already got like a pretty decent mid-bass wallop to it, but it looks like the bass on the Prometheus is going to be pretty considerably higher than on the TIN T2. The mid-range here you can see is a little bit more thinned out. So again, I think that the Prometheus is likely to sound a little bit more V-shaped, a little bit more, yeah. And the T2 Plus is probably going to be more, it's still like I would call mildly V-shaped, but a little bit more mid-range focused than the Prometheus, just based on the squiggles. Now that doesn't really tell us anything about, you know, how harsh is it to listen to, or what's the sound stage and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff I'll have to figure out with the full review. Buzz Earwave asking if I have the N3 Pro, which again is Cayin's digital audio player. Where do I have it? I've got it around here somewhere. Do I have it in arm's reach? That would be a really nice aesthetic touch. I do. Let me hold up. So this is, no, here, not on camera. This is on camera. This is Cayin's N3 Pro. This is a, I don't know, this is a really cool digital audio player. I did a review of it a while back. Yeah, I like this player. But, and it's made by Cayin, so it's made by the same makers as the Fantasy IEMs here. Your question is there an advantage to using, you know, devices from the same manufacturer? And generally I would say no. There shouldn't be. I would say that the N3 Pro is, for the most part, a pretty neutral sounding digital audio player, although it does have the optional tube amplifier mode, which might add a little bit of warmth, which could maybe take a bit of the edge off that frequency response here on the Fantasy. So maybe there might be a good match there. But I'm just kind of like generally, I've never worried about trying to match my audio players to my IEMs in terms of the brand. Most audio players will give you a neutral sound, and then most IEMs are gonna roughly sound the same regardless of which player you use it on. Shout out to Bubbly Water, hashtag not sponsored. Jeffrey's asking a question. I have a question. Can I compare frequency responses between the different reviewers on Squiglink? And the answer to that is kind of yes. I'm not sure exactly what your question is, so I'll try to answer it as I am interpreting it. A couple of different things that you can do here on squig.link. So one, if you scroll down to the bottom, I actually have links to a bunch of other reviewers databases, right? So there's a number of other databases. Some of them are on Squiglink as well. So at Precog, another fellow IEM reviewer, he publishes his frequency responses to his own precog.squig.link. So you can take a look at his measurements here. And one thing that's worth noting is that when you're comparing or when you're looking at frequency responses from one reviewer to another, there are going to be some inherent differences in this thing, right? This coupler, right? This microphone is supposed to be standardized, and for the most part, the graphs that you get out of it are roughly the same, but there are going to be some differences. So when you're comparing squiggles, I think it's important to just always compare squiggles from the same reviewer. Just because you're ruling out the possibility that a difference that you're seeing is actually just a difference of the measurement rank. Now, another way to answer your question, we'll go back here to squig.link, is the target responses. So I mentioned this gray line here is kind of like my ideal frequency response. This is my target. Now, if you look down here underneath the graph, there are other reviewers' targets. So you can kind of get a sense for what other reviewers are looking for. And we just talked about Precog. I click on this. This is the frequency response that he's looking for. And if I pull up both of them, I think I can do that. Can't I do that? Maybe not. Oh, I could do that if I do that. There we go. So if you compare them, you can see that they're pretty different, right? So when Precog is reviewing an IEM and he says that it doesn't have enough bass, and I review an IEM and I say it's got the perfect amount of bass, that is completely explained by this, in which you can see, we go down here to the sub-bass section, the super review target quite a bit below Precog's target because he likes more bass than I do. So yeah, I guess that's two different ways to answer the question, and hopefully one of those was fulfilling for what you were actually asking. Sangrian Tofsky asking, should I get the Thea Audio Legacy 5 or the FIO FA7? So I haven't heard the FA7. I don't know anything about that earphone, so I can't tell you. I can say I quite like the Thea Audio Legacy 5, especially if you throw in a 15 ohm adapter, but you don't need to. Jeremy Kiro saying, was that Moondrop mascot in the background? Yeah, I think Precog put that on his Squig site. I didn't put that there. And Mina, you're right. Say no to drugs and no to bass. Bass is a drug, and I'm not addicted. There's nothing wrong with bass. If you're into bass, that's cool. Lots of people. Most people like bass. I don't hate bass. I just, in moderation. Joe S., you're saying bubbly pineapple is the best. Okay, maybe one day I'll check that one out. This is cherry. I would say it's a little bit strong on the flavor, if I'm perfectly honest. I think of the bubble waters, Waterloo is my favorite. Hashtag not sponsored. Adam Mobius asking me, I'm curious, what are the audio posters of? So I don't think this is going to be of any help. Nope, that is of zero help whatsoever. But basically, these posters behind me are all from Yaxi pads, actually. For those who aren't familiar, right, I like a lot of Koss over on-ear headphones, the Koss Porta Pro, KPH30i, KSC75s. There's a company in Japan called Yaxi, YAXI, that sells aftermarket ear pads for putting on those different headphones. And I love those ear pads. I bought so many of them. And then every time you buy a pair, they will send you a poster, right? So they'll send you one of these smaller posters for most of the packages, or if you buy a multi-pack, you'll get this larger poster, which I have here, and it's out of focus and blurry, so that wasn't very helpful. But yeah, that's what those posters are. And Sangria Antovsky asking, do I keep all of my IEMs? The answer is yeah, for the most part. There's some that I've given away, but for the most part, I keep all my IEMs in a cabinet over here. In fact, if you join the Super Review Discord, I can show you a picture of what it looks like, but I keep all of my IEMs in, all right, walking away again, now coming back. I store all my IEMs in little boxes like this, and it's mostly just to make sure that they don't take up a ton of space, but I want to still have them on hand for future comparisons. And that's the thing that I've been trying to bring more into the reviews lately, is not just reviewing the individual IEM, but bringing in some, you know, other IEMs in the same price range, or maybe they're similar in some other ways for comparison. And it's very helpful to actually have them on hand. Otherwise, I got to rely on my memory, and audio memory is a pretty tricky thing, at least for me. Destino, what is my top one? My number one single dynamic driver IEM? Ooh, I should think about this long and hard, but I'm just gonna say it's the Moondrop SSR. If I think about it longer and harder, I might come up with a different answer, but off the top of my head, yeah. Juan saying, I fell asleep with G-Buds Pro and I regret falling asleep with G-Buds Pro, Galaxy Buds. Yeah, those fit a little bit weird. Was it because of the fit, or was it something else? You think you would have regretted falling asleep with the Galaxy Buds Plus? Jeremy Kira saying Yaxi is classy. I agree. I agree. I feel like we've cultivated the right culture here, where I see a lot of people agreeing with me that bass is a drug. Juan calling out SSR weeb. Yeah, I don't know that I qualify as a weeb. I don't watch any anime, but I definitely like that tuning. Jeffrey saying FIO FD5 the best single dynamic driver. I don't know about that one. Maybe. It's not bad. But yeah, folks, I think that's going to do it for this live stream. I really appreciate y'all tuning in and hanging out, having a conversation, dealing with me, getting used to this new setup. Actually, I'm kind of curious. If you have any feedback on the setup, please either drop a comment and down below this video, join the Discord, and let me know. How do you like this new setup? Because this is how I'm going to be doing my videos from now on. If you like this video, if you found it helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Check out squig.link. Bookmark it, make it your homepage. That would be a weird homepage. But anyway, check out squig.link, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next Super Review. Have a good one.